Miss Osborne, if you were returned to Gilead, would you be subject to danger of torture, a risk to your life, or a risk of cruel and unusual treatment or punishment?
I'm looking for June Osborne.
You're better off without her. Everyone that helps her ends up on the wall.
She has eluded your soldiers for 19 days.
Find her and bring her to me.
Do you have some secret, brilliant plan?
I made a promise to hurt them the way we hurt.
This morning, a plane left Gilead and landed at Pearson. There were 86 children on board.
This'll start a war.
We came here to fight.
No, you came here to fight.
You can't save her. You understand that, right? Some women don't want to be saved.
We're the ones we've been waiting for.
She's public enemy #1 in Gilead. She's not gonna last another week here.
Perhaps she's fulfilled her purpose and it's time to move on.
I can't. I'm gonna find her.
Run!
I'm gonna kill her.
How can I face him? Everything that has happened to her is because of me.
She chose to stay in Gilead. I can't ask God for something that she didn't want. Everything has changed. The world is tilted on its axis. Freedom agrees with you.
We are not free.
You have destroyed my life, my family, my friends, my country, and my child. I ask for justice.
Hi, my name is Gil Robertson, president of the African American Film Critics Association, and welcome to our latest edition of AAFCA's Virtual Roundtables. Today, we've got a real treat for you as we're talking to the cast members of the hit Hulu series, The Handmaid's Tale. We're going to kick things off by introducing you to the AAFCA members who are taking part in this call today, starting with our facilitator, Kantia Woods in Philadelphia, Aisha Muhammad in Philadelphia, Carolyn Hines in Toronto, Kim Singleton in New York City, Sharonda Williams in Atlanta, Nancy Green in Los Angeles, Ruben Recalled in Miami, and Thomasina Farrar also in Philadelphia. We got a lot of Philly in the house today. I'm gonna let you guys do what you do so well, and I will see you on the other side.
Good afternoon to you both. My name is Thomasina. My outlet is Music Movies Thoughts out of Philadelphia. I'd like to pose this question to both of you. We find out very early on in the series that Serena Joy was actually the mastermind behind the framework of Gilead, yet women were not allowed positions of power. Do you think that women were equally as culpable as the men for what happened in Gilead? And Amanda, I'd also like to ask you if you could answer that from your perspective as well as your character's perspective, Rita.
Yes, I do feel like the women that were in positions of power, particularly the wives and the aunts, were culpable. They did have to play along in order to survive in their environments with the rules and sort of the entire regime that was imposed by men. However, I think that some of the women's, particularly characters like Serena Joy, were even more violent, more menacing. And so, yeah.
What would Rita say?
Rita would say the same thing as me. Rita and I are very close in our outlook on the world and Gilead. I think that the only thing that I think that sort of got muddied with Rita after we see her grow through the seasons is her forgiveness of Serena Joy, her willingness to see the humanity in her. Serena Joy was her only family, her only base, her only one true connection. she's been in the Waterford house for what it seems to be close to a decade. And so I think that in order to survive for Rita, she had to sort of humanize Serena Joy and forgive a lot of the things that she did in order just to have a friend, just to have someone that she could feel love towards. Because at the end of the day, I think innately that's what we want to do as people. So I think Rita was slightly confused for a while, but she's not anymore. She's okay.
Thank you. And Warren, what would you say? Although complicit, are they equally as culpable, the women?
I think they are. I kind of love the question because men in Gilead, the power base of men are front and center. And yet, when you pull back the curtain, you realize that women in Gilead, women like Serena Joy, are also absolutely responsible for the power grid that exists. And I think that's what's so interesting about the show is that there's so many layers. The assumption early on is that it's a male world and all the inhumanity is because of them. And you know, the deeper we look, the more we understand, we realize that's just too simplistic a view. So well done for you. And I think that's absolutely accurate.
Hi, Aisha Muhammad, Black People Watch in Philadelphia. It's such an honor. I'm such a fan of this show. We see that June's experience in Gilead has changed her. Her character is kind of morphing into something different now. In the beginning of the series, she's changed into something different now. She seems a little darker, a little more sinister. Do you think that her relationship with Moira and the rest of the girls who are like survivors from Gilead will change? And I mean, Amanda, I guess you could, speak, do you think her relationship with the girls, the survivors will change going forward?
June's relationship?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I do. I'm very curious to see how it will change. I feel like a switch has been flipped in her this season, and we've seen glimmers of it before, but there's always been a hope that if she were to become free, that she would return to the June that we met in season 1. And I don't believe so in this season. I feel like there's too many things have happened and she's gone too far, and now there's an entirely new person. And I think the interesting thing that viewers will find is that the survivors, myself, Emily, Luke, Moira, want our June back, the June that we know, and I don't know if she's there anymore. And so it's a tricky situation because June is trying to find herself, or sort of the remnants of who she was before, and they're no longer there, and trying to appease friends and trying to appease her partner. And I think that we will see, I don't know if I'm allowed to give spoilers, I think we will see tensions in the relationships going forward.
I think you're absolutely right. And it's the cost of freedom. If you have lived for years in a world of Gilead, then there's a price to pay. And so while we finally see some freedom for June, the problems aren't over. In many ways, they've just begun. And thank God she has the women in her life, and as well as Luke, to rely on and help try and pull her back. But the cost has been far too great. And I think Amanda's right that she's a different June than the June we met at the start of the series.
Hi, Karen First Here's What Happened podcast and Karen Talks. So my question is for both Amanda and Warren. And first of all, Amanda, congrats on your win for the Canadian Screen Awards for Kim's Convenience. Yay!
Thank you.
So my question has to do with Rita's growth as a character from season 1. Like, as you said, she was in Gilead for almost like a decade, and she had to basically assimilate into that society and befriend Serena, her captor. But there's a scene in season 4, I'm not going to spoil it, but where it seems like she she's confronting this person who has done so much mental and physical damage to her, but like your body language says so much about where Rita is still mentally and her connection to Serena, because she's still very closed off and she holds herself in deference to her. And I notice her wardrobe still kind of reflects her life in Gilead. So can you tell me about her growth as a character mentally and verbally, because she's more verbal with Serena, but how she's still like conflicted about who she was while she was in Gilead? And Warren, could you speak towards the production of the show reflecting the growth of the characters, because the settings for each character is different? Like that scene with her and Serena, she kind of almost blends into the background. Like her, like props to the wardrobe department, because that color is almost the exact same color as the wall behind her. So could you both just speak about that?
You're very observant. I'm very impressed. Props to the wardrobe department, exactly. And as far as this season, her wardrobe, it was painstaking, the amount of time and the discussions that we had in how we were going to reveal Rita in Canada. And I felt, myself and the wardrobe department felt it was really important that we still kept her completely covered the same way that she was in Gilead for so long. We felt it was really important to allow her to still feel like she was free, because she wasn't necessarily wearing the Martha costume, but she was so used to it that that was her comfort space and comfort zone. Hey, there's Samira.
Hey,
Samira. So
hi, everyone.
I think it was very, I think especially because she doesn't speak a lot, and a lot of her story and the way she communicates is wardrobe and body language. I think the way she dresses at the beginning was very important. As far as her storyline over the 4 years, originally, there was, in the book, there were supposed to be 2 Marthas, Cora and Rita. And so I, with intention, was trying to play both sides. Cora is a little softer and a little more kind, and Rita is that sort of stoic, biting character. And slowly, over time, Rita becomes more Cora. You see the layers peel back. She's more gentle, she's more soft as she begins to trust June, Moira, Luke. And as far as her deference to Serena in the scene that you're talking about, I did a lot of research on refugees, and simply because you are in a new environment doesn't suddenly mean you switch. Simply because you might be physically free doesn't mean you are mentally or emotionally free. And it was really important to still keep the physicality of Rita. Again, if you've been doing something for 10 years, just because you go to a different city doesn't, you don't shake it off. And so it's a painstakingly slow growth or movement back to being a little more contemporary and finding her freedom. But I want to pay homage to how long it takes to reclaim your power and reclaim your freedom. So that's why the transition has been so slow.
You know, I would just add to that it's been fascinating. Rita has been a character that has quiet strength, but not a lot of verbalization, right? And so slowly, we've felt her presence in a significant way in each and every season, but we're finally getting more and more words and understanding what's going on inside of her, and learning that on the verbal side. So that's been kind of a wonderful, slow reveal as we've gone through season after season. And now in this new environment, you know, I agree with Amanda. You can't flip a switch, and yet she's in an environment where now we're going to hear more of what's inside, as well as continue to see it, and I love that.
Hi, Kathy Woods. My question is for Samira and Amanda. It is very eerie how you watch a television show and you say, oh, this can't happen in real life. And right now we are in a time where our rights as women are being challenged on every possible way, especially our bodies. How do you feel the eerie balance or the coincidence, for lack of a better word, of some of the things, maybe not to the extreme, but it is very much about, people who aren't women deciding what gets done to women and how women move to the world. How do you feel like playing these characters? And then you're looking at what's happening in the world and you're like, this seems very close to reality. Amanda, you can go first, please.
Unfortunately, we've been answering that question for years. And I'm not sure what relationship the writers have with fate, but it seems like every time something is written or is revealed in a season of The Handmaid's Tale, it unfolds in the rest of the world. In playing these characters and in being a part of a show like this that means so much to so many people around the world, I feel a sense of responsibility to speak out about issues with women, with reproductive rights. Before, I didn't necessarily feel like it was my responsibility or job as a part of what I do. I'm just an actor, I just play a character, but I feel like this show is a larger, it's now a part of a machine in which people find strength and find permission to be rebellious and find permission to fight back. And so the show has impacted me in forcing me to become a lot more political and a lot more outspoken, particularly about LGBTQ plus rights and women's rights.
What about you, Samira? How do you feel?
I think it's interesting that you use the word coincidence, because I'm not sure that that I believe that it is a coincidence. And thinking about what Amanda just said, I think the goal for me as an artist, I want to be a person who is involved in art that is reflecting the times that we're living in. I feel like ultimately that is our responsibility as artists when we're doing it right, when we're telling the right story. And I'm very happy to be a part of this, to be able to walk down the street and not have people just say, hey, you're Moira from that show, but have more in-depth conversations about what is happening in our world, to have people talking about it who wouldn't necessarily be talking about it if they weren't watching our show, to know that these are the issues that people are worried about in our actual world, and then have someone watch the show who, like I said, might not be as abreast of it, but make them go and do a Google search and see what's happening because of this. And as we know, sometimes like watching media and seeing stories that are like actual real stories sometimes pull at people's heartstrings more than just reading a story. So I do count myself very lucky to be a part of this show. And I think that as long as we're in this conversation, we're doing something right.
Outstanding. Thank you so much. And congratulations, Samira, on your baby.
Thank you.
Hello, guys. I'm Kim Singleton, considered Blacklit out of New York City. And my question is for Amanda and Samira. I've been a huge fan of the show since the beginning, and it deals with a lot of intense topics, from rape to being marginalized, just oppression. So my question to you guys, playing the characters, what emotional impact does it have on you? And then how do you decompress when you transfer off the set?
It has a whole lot of emotional impact. Look, it's such a thing to go to set and have to step into this character. Especially, I know, Amanda has been, her character has been in Gilead for so much longer than Moira has, but that trauma is still there. Stepping into the body and the mind of Moira every day is something that has to be a conscious effort to go into. But also, I think over the course of these 4 seasons, I've had to learn how to kind of shake her off at the end of the day. It's something that I don't think I realized what needed as much attention as I realize now. I know that I don't want to take Moira home to my wife at the end of every day at work. So there definitely is, an intentional process that I have to do to sit quietly, close my eyes, and kind of release her from my body. It's again, like I said, when I'm doing it right, whatever that means, when I feel like I'm doing it right, then she does kind of get into my bones, and I don't want her there all the time.
For me, the emotional impact hasn't been as great. I find it interesting and scary, and I find it kind of fun to go to those places, if I'm being honest. The thing that I, like Samira, have to do to shake off is I have to shake off the physicality. A lot of times in tandem, I would be doing another show and it's a comedy. And I can't tell you how many times the director of the other show would have to say, "You're not Rita," because my physicality, I would stand like Rita in the scenes and sort of become very subservient, and I would have to, at the beginning of the day, trick myself into not becoming Rita, because there was a lot of work going into trying to embody that character of trying to shrink within yourself while being present. And so it's something that I still, after every season, have to remind myself to come back to being Amanda, and that I'm not a servant in Gilead. Although my kids think I am, so.
Wow, thank you.
What if you brought the comedy character to Handmaid's Tale? Like, this is not a comedy.
Imagine. Come in. Hey guys, no. Sorry.
No, that's fine. My name's Nancy Green. I'm with Film Critique. And my question is basically, during the Trump administration, the show was brought up a lot politically in terms of the things that were going on in the world and being referenced in that way. And I wanted to know, what do you think the long-term impact of this show will be, and what do you hope it will be, especially on younger generations going forward?
You know, I think early on, it became clear that we were part of the resistance, and we wear that with great pride. And we felt throughout the 4 years that we were making the show, all we wanted was to be less relevant. And now we're in a world where Gilead is out of the White House. Gilead is out of the Justice Department. And yet we look at the world that we're currently living in and we say, all right, maybe we're sleeping a little better at night, but there's so far to travel still. And so I hope that through Margaret Atwood's vision over 35 years ago of saying, this is all based on real life events. It's a fabric, a quilt that she constructed, all from elements in history and over time. We, of course, and the writers borrow from all of the world we live in and the events that we're surrounded by to come up with the storylines that we present to you each season. And I think as we look around at the world we're in, we get to take a deep breath, but I think we're fully aware that there's such a long distance to go. So I hope that for the generation that looks at this show, embraces it, they say, it's not over. The battle's not over. In fact, maybe it's only just begun. And if we can keep that ignited, if we can say, don't stop, then that feels pretty good, I think, for us as artists.
My name is Ruben Peralta from Miami, cocalaicas.net. It's curious that I'm the only male interviewing. It's like the opposite of Gilead. And do you guys,
my world?
Do you guys think that if this show has been adapted 40 years ago in the 50s or 40s, it has to be, it had the same impact that it had, like it has today? Or is that a different approach or different comments back like 60 years ago?
I'm not sure that this show would be able to be made And if it were, none of us would be in it, meaning us. Um, it's so nice to be able to be a part of a show where our showrunner Bruce Miller, because the book, Margaret Atwood's book, is it's a completely white world, and our showrunner being like, well, that's not the kind of show that I want to make. In 2016, when we first filmed the first season, he wasn't interested in having a show that it didn't have any people of color represented in it. For a lot of different reasons, I think that the show that we make today would not be the show that they would have made in the 50s or 60s if they had tried to do an adaptation then. I'm very happy that the adaptation of this show came in 2016 when Samira Wiley was able to be a part of it, and Amanda Brugel was able to be a part of it, and Warren Littlefield was able to be a part of it. That not only are people of color in it in a way that I'm not sure that we would be, but also we have men and women who think a certain way that I'm not sure, a Warren Littlefield and a Bruce Miller, men who are so progressive in their thinking. I'm not sure that those kinds of men would be able to, be a part of this show back then. So I'm happy they didn't make it back then, Ruben.
Mr. Littlefield, have to add something?
First to say thank you, Samira.
You're welcome.
That. The world changed in terms of television, right? A network never would attempt to put this kind of show on the air. And that we don't have to go back to the 50s for that. All we have to go back to is, in the last 5 years. Yeah. Now, would a network attempt to do this show? They would not. It would make them very uncomfortable. And in fact, that's where we live. We live in that uncomfortableness. And Samira's right. Bruce and I had long conversations before production about, because how is this going to be cast? And what we wanted is the world of Gilead to feel, because we were creating a world handed to us from Margaret's book. And in the creation of that world, we felt it will resonate, it will feel more real. The warning will be greater if it reflects the world that we live in. And that's a diverse world. And again, do we wish many times that we weren't as relevant as we are? Oh, yes. But we're not there, right? So I think that's part of our job, is to reflect all the difficulty that we are in right now, the racism, the oppression, all of these issues, and somehow be that voice that says, don't give up. Because if June and these other characters, if they haven't given up, then you can't give up. And that's part of our cry. That's what we say to the world as you watch. Despite all of this, don't give up. And I think season 4 in particular is a year of patience rewarded. A lot of seeds were planted for a number of seasons, and we've waited. And sometimes we've been frustrated with, why can't there be more change? And now we're starting to see it. And I think there's a real satisfaction to that. And yet there's so much of the journey to still go on.
Tamika Newhouse here. I represent AAMBC and Black Writers Weekend here in Atlanta, Georgia. And Warren, I wanted to kind of piggyback just off of that, just admiring the world that you guys created in The Handmaid's Tale. I've been watching from the very first season. I'm seeing the storylines evolve. Those first couple of seasons, there were so many gruesome and sometimes uncomfortable scenes that we had to witness. But one thing that has stayed consistent is the strength and the bond between the women.
Yes.
They're having to endure so much, but they're also carrying, the weight of the world on their shoulders. They still have this hope. We see even June lead children to freedom. And I'm seeing how even when it's time for these women to, I guess, stand up or unite, they all have this inner strength that they kind of reach down into. And I kind of apply that to even nowadays or in real life, how as Black women, Amanda and Samira, I don't know if you guys are familiar with this term of the strong Black woman, and we're always meant to be strong and we can carry it all. And sometimes we kind of fight against that, but I'm seeing that that actually works for these women in this show, is pulling on an inner strength and not really giving up. And it really is our mental strength that's helping us push through that. I want to know, as far as Amanda and Samira, the moment in the show where you felt was transitional for you, where it was a little bit overwhelming, where you saw what these women would have to endure and get through that. What was that moment? What was that scene? And why do you think it took you there?
Even just listening to you made me emotional. Of thinking about the scene. When we escape and we're running through the forest, it's beautiful. It's beautifully shot. However, we had to do that in real life. We had to be in the woods at 4 a.m. with 80 children. And I kept thinking about the women that would run from all around the world with their children, banding together, trying to race with their children to freedom, or sacrificing themselves and then throwing their children in a boat and sending their children to God knows what, not knowing if their children were going to make it to freedom or die. And it was, before doing the show, I realized how close it is to the real world, but it always felt like acting. It was the first time where I completely felt what it would feel like to have to flee for your life with your child.
Mm-hmm.
And doing it with only women, and realizing that I would only want to make a journey like that with women, because I think they're the only beings that would be able to survive that and push forward because of a maternal instinct, because of the willingness to fight to the death for freedom and your child. Sorry, it's making me emotional. And so it was the largest transition I've had at the workplace, because it impacted me so much that I used that moment, at 4 a.m. looking around at all of these actors, and I still use it to draw on scenes in Handmaid's Tale now. It gave me such insight into experiences beyond what I know. And then I felt guilty, because I thought, I don't know if I will ever know this. I was, just because of geography, I happen to be born in a nation where I am free. I will never know this. And it made me feel guilty, but then it made me feel like I had to do whatever I could to pay homage to women who've had to do this.
Wow, that's really, I never heard that story, Amanda.
It was crazy,
anyways.
Sarah. It was crazy.
Yeah. When I think about Moira, I go back to season 1. I think so much of who Moira is, I always hear her referred to as like, she's such a badass. And I feel like every single scene that Moira does reflects what you're talking about to me, because she's just like such like that like strong Black woman character. And so when I think that that's like mostly what I see of her, and I think about every single thing that we can be as Black women, I start to think about actually a scene that may not really be seen as typical strong Black woman, but I still do think that there's strength in it. It's, I believe, the season finale of season 1, where Moira has done everything that she can to get out of Gilead, and she's successful. She's gone into Canada, she's shell-shocked, and it's the very last scene when she's walking out of the refugee center, and she walks up to Luke and she sees Luke. And the courage that it takes to let down your guard and to show the world that I am human just the way you are. And that is sometimes arresting for us as Black women, to show that yes, I am the same as you. I have every single emotion that you go through. I have that as well. That can be arresting, and that can be, put people off guard sometimes, to show people that we are the same. So to put down Moira's guard and to flood my face with tears because I had made it, that I will always remember that scene. And I think that showed a different kind of strength.
Amazing stories, ladies. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Sharada Williams from Pair Weight. I want to open this question up for everyone, but I want to start with you, Warren, because we really see that the theme of season 4 is really about freedom, and what that freedom, or the journey to freedom, what does that look like, and how does it end for these characters? But I really wanted to ask you, it's such a bold move, because Warren, I was getting tired. I was like, if June gets captured again, I'm coming to Gilead to get her myself, okay? But she finally has made, I want to know, like, what was the conversation? Like, why now in season 4, why was this the time for June to actually find freedom? And then for Amanda and Samira, I want to ask you, I need to know what your reaction was when you read the script, like, my girl June is free, I'm gonna be with my friend again. I want to know your reactions about that. But Warren, I want to start with you first.
Okie doke. Well, normally I think in the life of a series and for the character of June, you would have said that's a season ending story, or that kicks off the new season. And of course, we just hate to follow the rules. So we did it in the middle of the season. And it is a year of freedom, an examination of freedom. What does that feel like? But also, what's the cost of being in Gilead? So we wanted, in telling that story, it just felt right in the middle of the year when it's least expected, boom, that's where we go. And with the help, of course, of Moira, and not just the help, like literally pushing, kicking, dragging June onto that boat, freedom is realized. And by the way, also for Moira, at a tremendous cost to her emotional life and what she has going on with a woman and a relationship that is really, really important to her. But what does she choose? She chooses to save June. Right, and I've seen it so many times. When Moira and June come back together, I just burst into tears, and I'm an emotional wreck going through all of it. But I think what we're trying to really examine is, you may have freedom, but what is everything that's led up to that? How does that impact your essence, your being? And as we've seen with Rita, as we've seen with Moira, as we've seen with Luke, even though they've had some semblance of freedom, after the experience of Gilead and what that's done to their lives, that is just not a simple equation. And I think that complexity, that's where the strength of the show lies.
And Amanda and Samira, what was your reaction when you read that you're about to be reunited?
So thrilled and excited and nervous. And I was really excited this season to be able to have any screen time with Moira. I was excited that there were going to be 2 Black women on screen together that don't necessarily like one another and have to bond immediately and had to sort of figure out what our relationship would be. I was excited and extremely excited to be in a room with June, Moira, Emily, and just to have the Gilead band back in Canada. And yeah, it was very exciting, and it seemed new and fresh, which was appreciated.
I'd had a conversation with Bruce Miller, our showrunner, before I read the scripts. I wanted to just talk to him about Moira's arc this season. So he's kind of going through it with me. And then, you know, like Warren said, it didn't happen at the middle of the season. He's like, in episode 5 at the end. I'm like, wait, what? I was shocked. I thought he was kidding at first. I'm like, y'all just gonna do that? Y'all just gonna do it? And just right there, just like in the middle. Okay. And I was shocked. I felt, you know, you saying, Warren, earlier, our patience being rewarded. I felt like a fan, you know, like we've been watching this forever, like we finally get it. But also for me as an actor, I just felt incredibly excited to share the screen with Lizzie again. I think she is just such an amazing actress, and I just feel like my scenes my work is always elevated when I'm on screen with such an amazing actress such as Lizzie. So that was just something so much for me to be able to look forward to doing that. And then, like Amanda said, getting to Canada and being in Canada with all of the women from Gilead, being able to have scenes with Amanda, who is such a delight. I have like an amazing time sharing the screen with her, but also just hanging out on set with her was amazing. And yeah, this season it was like June coming back to or getting, you know, being in Canada. It was really interesting, the parallels of like her finally being in Canada, and like she's in Canada now, but like us filming this during COVID, like we were all stuck in Canada. And it really made us, I feel, like bond in a different way. You know, Amanda is Canadian, so she kind of showed us around. And not really was COVID. But it just I feel like really brought the cast in a way that was parallel to what was happening on screen.
Thank you all so much. I really appreciate it.
Amanda, Samira, and Warren, thank you so much. We really, really, really love the show. On behalf of the world's largest group of Black film critics, thank you for watching this edition of AAFCA Roundtables. Have a great day.
Thank you.
You guys were fabulous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so much.